Salute is a program for and about men and women who have served our country. Our program includes news about the laws that affect veterans, information on benefits and services, and news from veterans organizations. And now, our host, Bob Peters.
Hello and welcome to Salute. My guest today is Alan Stover. Alan is the past National Commander and founder of the Veterans of Underage Military Service. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
This is a very interesting subject to me because I've heard about this, and I don't think a lot of people know about the underage service. But first, I'd like you to tell me a little bit about yourself, where you came from, and what branch of service were you in?
I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and spent my first 14 years there, and mainly on the east side, Huff Avenue. People who live in or been to Cleveland, lived in Cleveland. No, Huff Avenue wasn't a real nice neighborhood. My parents were divorced when I was 5 or 6 years old. My mother had a hard time. And besides, I was getting a little bored with school and all that, so I decided I'd try to go in the Marines. So I went down, skipped school one day, and I went down to the Marine recruiting office in downtown Cleveland, and it was closed. This was in 1952. Later in 52. The only thing I can figure it was the Marine Corps birthday. They were closed for that. The only reason I know. Well, being a typical 14-year-old kid, I didn't want to skip school again. And we'd had a neighbor who had, whose son had gone into the Coast Guard when he was young. And so I said, I'll try the Coast Guard. So I went down there and gave him my phony birth certificate, which my sister, who worked for the state, phonied up for me, added 3 years to the birth date, so made me look 17 instead of 14. And the way I was able to do it was tell her that if she didn't do it, I would join a gang in the neighborhood. There was a gang in the neighborhood, and the truth is they wouldn't have wanted me. I wasn't mean enough, but it worked. And then the Coast Guard sent the papers and to my mother to sign while she was working, so I forged her name and sent it off. And when she found out that I was going into the Coast Guard, she threatened to, call it off, and I made the same threat to her. I joined this local gang. So it worked. I went in the Coast Guard, went to Cape May, New Jersey for boot camp, and everyone, I was supposed to be 17, but when I went into the headquarters, when we arrived, they picked us all up at the train or the bus and took us there. And this one drill instructor was walking up and down in front of us, just like they do in the movies with the Marines. And he came to me and he faced me and he says, "How old are you?" And I almost said 14 without thinking because he had me so scared. And I said, 17, sir. And he said, "Yeah, and I'm the Queen of Sheba." And that started it all. In boot camp, they all kind of knew I was underage, I think, although I never admitted it. My whole time.
The fact you didn't shave or couldn't shave, that's
another story, yeah. But anyway, I promised them that I would let them know the last day after graduation, the next morning when we all went, that I'd let them know how old I was. And I told them, they said, okay. They all gathered around. I said, 17. And they didn't believe me, of course. On the shaving, it was my sister gave me a razor. Well, I never shaved in my life, so I didn't want to cut myself. So I didn't put a blade in because I wanted to look like the other guys. They all went in and shaved in the morning. So I went in, put some lather on, and started shaving. One of the guys grabbed the razor and opened it up, and there wasn't a blade. So I got caught.
Yeah.
So the first ship I was on, I asked for overseas duty, Pacific. And I got to Honolulu, and they asked, and it was near the end of the Korean War. I graduated like in April of '53, and the Korean War was over in July of '53. And they at the headquarters, they said, where would you like to go? And I said, well, I'd like to go to Korea. And they said, well, we're getting ready to sign an armistice over there. We don't have any units left over there. And I said, well, get me as close as you can. Well, as close as you can was about 100 yards away, a buoy tender, a ship. And I went aboard there, and I had a hard time. The guys were pretty hard on me because they said, the older guys especially, because they said, we're going to make your life so miserable, you're going to give up, tell your true age, and go home and get an education. And I said, you understand, I don't have a place to go to. My mother was single. She had got remarried, and she didn't want a 14-year-old boy around. And so I said, I don't really have any place to go back there. And I said, you wouldn't want me to go back that neighborhood anyway. And that didn't stop him. So I was there a year. I asked for a transfer to Japan or the Philippines. They transferred me to Guam, typical military. And I got to Guam, and I saw the base there. Guam isn't like it is now. There were no hotels, no nothing there. And the Coast Guard base was desolate and just dirt all around. And so the next day after I arrived, I went to headquarters and I said, I'd like a transfer. And the guy said, well, where would you like to transfer to? And I said, well, Japan or the Philippines. He said, well, that's outside of the Marianas district. You're going to have to wait 6 months again to request the transfer. And I said, isn't there any place I can go outside of this godforsaken place? He said, well, you could request isolated duty, but no one would be that stupid. And I said a classic line, don't underestimate me.
Don't underestimate,
yeah. And it was a great, they sent me down to a place called Palau, which was right 7 miles from Peleliu, which was a great battle of World War II. And it was on Angar, was the name of the island. And we worked 6 days a week, tropical hours, 7 to 12 in the morning. Mm-hmm. We had open galley, so if you got hungry at night, you could go get something to eat. And they gave us a case of beer a month. So life was good. And,
but you didn't have any of that. I mean, you were only 14. You weren't drinking any beer then, were you?
I sure was, yeah.
Speaking of, you have a couple pictures of yourself when you were, well, you might like to show that to the...
Yeah, this is the one in boot camp.
You sure look 14.
Yeah, I did. And then I have this one. This is when I was 16 in Japan. Actually, I may have been still 15. I'm the one over here.
Yeah.
On the right, and I was an old salt then. I had 2 years in.
Wow.
And I went to my next assignment was down here in the Coast Guard base in Miami Beach on the Coast Guard cutter Androscoggin, which was the flagship of the 7th District. And I went aboard, and the custom in those days was to write the names of everywhere you had been on your ditty bag, which is a little personal effects bag. And I put Guam, Hawaii, Hong Kong, because I've been to Hong Kong, Japan, Philippines. I've been to those on the way back. I was happy to get on a plane that went to all of them. I went aboard, and I heard this one guy say, boy, he's an old salt. You know? I was 16 years old, just turned 16. I was an old salt already. So it was good. I put my time in, but so 18 and a half, I got out, honorable discharge, and 4 years of service. And,
did you finish your high school, or did you do it in the service, or?
Well, I started in the service. They had what they called USAFI courses. Yeah. I don't know if they still have them. But I took English because I didn't do real good in English when I was back in
7th grade.
7th, 8th grade, yeah. That's 8th grade education. And then I started, when I got out of the Coast Guard, I went in the Merchant Marines on the Great Lakes for a year as an able seaman. And I was taking a correspondence course for high school. And I was talking to this one summer student who's University of Michigan, who was studying automotive engineering. And he says, why don't you go to college? You know, when we lay up in November, he's got the GI Bill and everything. I said, well, I don't think I'm smart enough, you know. I had no confidence in myself. I was walking around with a high school, legal 8th grade, legal 8th grade. And he says, no, you gotta be kidding. He says, most of the guys in my class are dummies. He says, besides, they don't study. You work hard, you'll get you'll pass. So that inspired me. So I wrote to this outfit I was taking these courses from, and I said, look, I want to go to college. I need a diploma. So they sent me a diploma. So I got in, and about 3.5 years later, taking lots of credits, I graduated at the top of my class with a bachelor's degree in electronic engineering, and that for the next 40-some years I was an electronic engineer. So.
Oh, wow. You had really an interesting life.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Well, you know, one of the things you're here to talk about is your National Veterans of Underage Military Service.
Right.
Now, tell us how that got started. Obviously, you know, you found a lot of other men who kind of like snuck in there too, huh?
Right, yeah. A lot of them from World War II, some from Korea, and even some from Vietnam. In '91, I was talking, just talking to my daughter about, about my service, and she says, "You were probably the youngest guy to serve during the Korean War." And I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, she says, "Why don't you find out?" I said, "Well, I don't know." And, and I was kind of hesitating, and I said, "I don't know how to do that." She said, "Well, why don't you start an organization?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, okay." Well, it preyed on my mind a while, and finally I said, I can start a little group. I've got about a dozen guys together, and we sit around and tell war stories. So I decided to start it, and I sat down, did a little planning, and then I went down to a local lawyer and says, if I'm going to do this, I really ought to incorporate, shouldn't I? Because I could just see some guy having some war-related mental problems, and they'd sue me for something. So I incorporated it, and I said, as long as I'm going to do all that, I may as well get the post office and the IRS to recognize us, because that's how I incorporated as a nonprofit organization. So we're a 501c19, which is like a 501c3, but it's for veterans only. And you have to have a high percentage, I forget what it is, 90-some% are veterans, in order to maintain your tax status and be tax exempt. So I got all that, and I started to send off releases to different newspapers. It started out as just a bunch of guys locally, and I just kept sending these press releases out around the country, and of course I'm getting guys calling me and writing me from all over the country, and the first call I got was from a Philadelphia newspaper. It was kind of interesting because she said, "I need a list of all your members in Philadelphia area so I can interview them for an article." I said, "Well, I don't have any members. That's why I sent the release, so I could get some members."
I call you back.
Yeah. She says, "Well, how can I write an article if I don't have any members to interview?" I said, "How can I get any members to interview if you don't print my release?"
Yeah.
So they didn't print it. They did a couple of years later. But I started to get guys calling me from all over. Every one of them has has their own story on how they got in or why they left. And so I started to send out membership applications. About 3.5 years later, I turned it over to someone else. We had an election because I was getting burned out. My late wife and I worked really hard on this. And we had 650 members when I gave it up. And since then, we've got we're total of 2,700 and so 750 have gone through the association. A lot of them are World War II vets who've passed away. We still have about 1,500 active members nationwide.
Yeah.
And they range, the rule is from you have to have enlisted at age 16 or under in order to be eligible for membership. 15 and under if you're World War II Merchant Marine, because 16 was legal in the Merchant Marine there. And 19 and under for World War II women, because 20 with parents' permission was legal, 21 without. We have had at least one woman member who's 13. So
wow.
she'd be, and her story is very interesting. She joined the Army, and she made it to Europe at 13, and she got caught. And Eisenhower had a bunch of people that were sending back to the U.S.
So this is obviously around Korea War time, right?
It was World War II.
World War II.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
But it was near the end of World
Yeah.
War II, I think. She was over there, and there were a bunch of guys that were sent back, and Eisenhower happened to come in there.
General Eisenhower,
And they
yeah.
mentioned, you know, that she was underage, and she was crying. She said, I loved the Army. I wanted to stay. And he went up to her, and he says, go home, little girl, and grow up, and come back when you have. We need good soldiers like you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of neat.
Yeah.
It chokes me up sometimes when I hear that. But she never did go back in because she went back to the States, got married,
Yeah.
and never did go back in. And but we've had some interesting guys come in. It's an Audie Murphy. We've never been able to confirm whether he was underage or not. There's two sources.
Yeah, I've heard something about that in the past.
Depends on who you talk to. I'll go on the web, you know, look for him on the internet, and they said he was 16, but his official thing says 17, but his sister said he was 16. So we've never been able to confirm that.
Yeah.
But among our members, we've had 2 Medal of Honor recipients, at least 1 U.S. Senator, Senator Mike Mansfield, gone in underage. Gene Hackman was a 16-year-old Marine,
yeah.
but we never got him to be a member. I was able to contact his agent, but there was never any response when we made the offer to be to join as a membership. And we have some generals. We had the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Borda, went from seaman recruit to 4-star admiral. And interesting, Jack Lucas was one of our members. He was a Marine in World War II. He went in at age 14, and he wanted to go fight. That's why he went in. And he was a big guy. That's part of the reason he got in. They found out he was underage when he was 15. He wrote a letter to his girlfriend, mentioned his age, and they censored letters in those days. So when they saw he was 15, they confronted him, and he asked to stay over there. Well, they did that sometimes in World War II because these guys were over there filling a slot. Replacements were hard to find because they were being chewed up out in the islands there. So they let him stay, but they refused to send him into combat. Well, he decided he's going to go to combat anyway. So he got his bag, his gear, and went and stowed away aboard a troop ship that he knew was going to the combat zone. He got there, he got off, and he's at Iwo Jima the first day. He was there on the first day, and he's in there firing and doing what he wanted to do. And the second day, he's in a trench, and his rifle jammed, and he looked down to get it fixed, and he saw a hand grenade.
Uh-oh. And it wasn't
So
his.
he yelled, he yelled grenades, and another one came in. So there were 2 hand grenades. He leaped on them, pushed one down in the soil in the volcanic ash, and the other one went off. Fortunately, the one that went off was the deeper one. He was still 7 months in a hospital.
Wow.
But he became the youngest Marine ever to get the Medal of Honor. He did that action 5 days after his 17th birthday.
Wow.
And he was the youngest man since the Civil War to receive the Medal of Honor. And interestingly, when he was listed as a deserter back in Hawaii. And when he realized that the 30th day he would be listed as a deserter, he went to the CO of one of his cousin, happened to be on board, helping to feed him, stealing food from the chow hall. And he went to the captain, turned himself in, told him why he was stowed away. And the colonel said, who was over the captain, said, I wish I had a whole shipload of Marines like you, want to fight as much as you do. You can stay and go ashore with us. That captain, who he reported to, also received the Medal of Honor for action the same day.
Wow.
That Jack. I talked to Jack a lot on the phone over the last few years before he died. He died about a couple of years ago. And the interesting thing was he was always so grateful that I'd started this association and all this wonderful thing. And I say, you know, Jack, I'm really grateful for what you did too. And he just brushed it off like it was nothing, you know. And
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, listen, why don't you tell the people where you guys meet? Do you have a phone number, a site, or anything that if somebody wants to get in hold of, touch with you? Yeah,
well, I have my local phone number. If anyone wants to call me at 352-430-2305. The national phone number is, and I hold this up here, maybe.
Okay, yeah, we've got this flag. This is your. I think you got to go this way.
The other way.
You got to go that way. Yeah, we'll hold it.
Got our logo on, and underneath is the
1-888-653-8867. 1-888-653-8867. That's your national one, huh?
That's a national one, yeah. And we don't have a building or anything. It's whoever the national commander is, it's in his house. A way to remember the number is Veterans of Underage Military Service. Initials are VUMS. So it's 1-888-OLD-VUMS. So that's one way to remember it.
You live in you live in the villages?
I live in the villages. We have a small group in the villages, four villagers.
And when do you meet?
We meet.
Oh, it's only 4 villagers? I mean, if somebody...
Unfortunately, since we meet at Laurel Manor, only villagers can come.
Oh, so you're losing out on some membership then.
You're right, yeah, yes. I'd like to find another location maybe. The problem is that some of my members use golf carts. So if I had it elsewhere, I'd have to have a second meeting in the month.
You'd have to have a chauffeur, yeah.
Yeah, and but we meet the second Wednesday of every month at Laurel Manor at 9:30 in the morning. Mm-hmm. This coming April, we're going to have a luncheon with the ladies. So we won't have a meeting at Laurel Manor, but we'll have one in May. If anyone is interested.
Do you have a national get-together once a year?
Yeah, we have one every April. When I started, incidentally, this is our 20th anniversary this year. And when I started it I started in 1991. In 1993, we had a reunion in Las Vegas at the Sands Hotel. And so every year they hold it in April.
Yeah.
It's still, you get the good prices. And the weather's good usually wherever you're at. We're going to hold it the 14th of April, starts the 14th of April in Cheyenne, Wyoming, at the Holiday Inn there. So we just have a bunch of guys come out.
Yeah. Did you say you have a website for this, the National?
Yeah, it's the same website is also www.oldvums.org. And they can go on that. If they go on history, they'll see my name's in there where I started it. And then there's the requirements for membership and that membership application and such as that.
Great, yeah. It's been very interesting. You have a book too over there, right?
Right, yeah, we've had...
Volume 3, right?
Yeah, this is volume 3. We have 3 volumes. Actually, there's a 4th one that's came out. And... but this is the 3rd copy. It's about 200 stories in here of men who have and women who have served underage, joined underage. And our requirement is that you just have to be sworn in.
Yeah.
We've had them sworn in, and that afternoon, the mother comes and says, "No, my boy is not going to war," and so they get out. But they had a few hours; they were legally in. So
yeah.
So we accept them for membership.
Now you can't get that anywhere or online or.
No, we just about sold out. You can get volume 4 probably if you go to the national website. That's a smaller book that just came out recently.
Yeah, because I'm sure a lot of people would like to read these stories.
Volume 1, incidentally, the first volume doesn't have volume number on it. Is last time I heard it was sold on eBay for $150. So
wow.
Yeah, because they're hard to come by. I have a few at home, but tells the story of them. Lists some interesting things too. Like there's a number of people we found, number of military guys we found who served underage were killed underage. And the first one I found was Norman B. Gibbs from Peoria, Illinois. He's a 50-year-old Marine. He was killed at Guadalcanal. And then have a few others.
You made a point, we were talking earlier about some of these people don't want to admit it because they're afraid of legal action.
Right, yeah.
You want to explain what's all that?
I'm glad you brought that up. I was getting a lot of calls from women, and we have a lot of women in the group, but the questions they were asking sounded a little different. I finally put two and two together, and I realized that they were calling for their boyfriends or husbands who wanted to find out if there were any repercussions. You know, a man puts 20 years in the military, 2 years underage. If they take that 2 years away, he loses his retirement pay.
Right.
Okay. Well, so I wrote to all the branches of the service and came up with Underage Veterans Handbook, in which I gave the replies from all of the branches of service, and the replies are all the same. We're all the same. No, if you get past age 17, there's no repercussions. All of your service time underage counts toward retirement, counts toward veterans benefits, everything. Virtually almost all mine, not all mine, but more than half of mine was underage.
Yeah.
But if you're caught below 17, you're released, which means you get no benefits, no nothing, like you never served.
Yeah.
But I had one man call me once that said, you better keep quiet because they're going to make you pay back all the money that you were paid in salary. And I said, when you're in, and I said, well, I wouldn't amount to a heck of a lot, you know, $68 a month or whatever I was earning. But it's not true. There are no repercussions. Now, there was one branch that said that did not come back right away.
Let me guess. The Coast Guard.
Coast Guard. I got a letter from the Chief of Personnel of the Coast Guard that said, we reserve the right to prosecute you at any time. So I called him and I said, you know, that was 43 years ago. And he says, I know, but we reserve that right. I said, well, are you going to come after me? And he says, no, we're not going to come after you, but we reserve the right to at any time. I says, well, I was a juvenile. Does that count for anything? He says, well, that's a legal thing. I don't know anything about that. I said, well, that's why I wrote the letter. So I didn't get anything out of him. So over the strong objections of my late wife, I wrote a letter to the Commandant of the Coast Guard and says, next Wednesday I'm going to come down to headquarters with Channel 13 News and turn myself in because I can't have this hanging over my head the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. I got an immediate answer, and that's in that little handbook that, no, there's been a misunderstanding. Our policy is the same as the Navy. There's no repercussions or anything.
If anybody wanted, is that on your website too? You know, those letters?
I believe so, but they can always get one. They'll send one to any underage veteran.
All right. Well, you know, I'm afraid we're almost out of time.
Okay.
So I just want to mention a couple things because I stopped over at Gator Harley Davidson the other day, so my friend Peg, and I picked these flyers up. This one here is about the annual memorial ride, the 4th annual police escorted memorial and National Armed Forces ride. It's going to be on May 21st, and that's out both of the Harley places, Stormy and Gator. And you can go to their website, www.gatorharley.com or www.stormyhillharley.com. That's coming up on May 21st, so, you know, check it out. And they also have this coming out because, you know, the Harley Davidson does an awful lot for the disabled American veterans. And this is a cruise that they're doing. There's several cruises, Europe, Alaska, Caribbean, starting in May, July, November. So if you're riding around and going past Harley's, one of the Harley shops, stop in and check it out because all these money they raise helps out the disabled American veterans. And I got to thank you, sir. I mean, this is I enjoyed this show a lot.
Nice.
And it's always interesting because my father-in-law, I think he snuck in, and but he got his high school diploma afterwards. A lot of the guys got their diplomas afterwards.
Right.
I thank you for your service. I thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And to all our veterans out there, and active military and their families, we salute you. Till next time.
Let us know what you want us to present in our future programs. Please call Lakefront TV at 352-728-9707 with your programming ideas and suggestions.